Hi, this is Roopak and you're listening to Flux Navigators. I'm a producer and media entrepreneur and founder of Mumbai LA production company Bang Bang. I'm also a diplobrat, or the kid of a diplomat, and that's one of the main reasons I've had the unique opportunity to live in 13 cities in 10 countries on 6 continents. It's a major part of my identity, you could say. So I've grown up with the deep-seated belief that the world is a very small place, and I have the strong desire to make everyone else internalize that too. It's also the reason I'm somewhat of a chameleon when it comes to my English. My accent unconsciously switches depending on whom I'm talking to. Sometimes that freaks people out, but that's how it's always been since I was a little kid. But enough about me, let's move on to the show. Since that fateful day at CES 2016 when Netflix announced it was going live in 130 new countries in one shot, we've been living in a new content paradigm, one where audiences around the world are watching content created around the world. En masse. It's what I like to call the decentralization of Hollywood. Join me on Flux Navigators as I shoot the shit with creators, writers, showrunners, producers, directors, investors, media executives, and other key voices shaping this new global reality. Welcome to Flux Navigators. Hello, listeners, and welcome to this episode of Flux Navigators, where I am in conversation with Samata Narra, who is the Senior Vice President of Equity and Inclusion for Content at Warner Media and a friend. Hey, Samata, welcome to the show.
Ooh, friend status. Stop it. This is awesome. What an honor. Seriously, though, what an honor. That's the first time that I got to hear the opening to the podcast because I got to hear so many of the other ones without it. So nice. I'm very excited to be here. And
I'm excited to have you here. What's going on right now? Because I'm sitting here in Bombay. It's a Saturday morning. It's a Friday evening for you in LA where you are. First question, over here where I am, it feels like Omicron is on its way out. And I'm actually going to go to Soho House today and do my first in-person meeting in a while. What's going on for you? Are you back at work physically or hybrid or still at home?
Sir, I'm still at home for the most part, which is really, really hard. I don't want to work from home anymore. I actually like seeing people. And I like being out. And I'm very, very excited to get to go back at least a little bit now, I guess you could say. I think that there's this flexibility part of it is very, very good. Mm-hmm. But I really do miss like all the awesome people that, I've been talking to like my whole career that I haven't really seen, it feels like, in a long time.
Cool. So Samata, you know what this podcast is about generally, right? And, I talk a lot about and I write a lot about the decentralization of Hollywood. And I'm interested, what does that mean to you?
Oh, I don't think you can call it Hollywood anymore. Mm-hmm. Do you?
Well, to me, it's interesting you say that because when I dissect it, to me, what decentralization of Hollywood really means is a decoupling of the physical space from the concept of Hollywood from the 30-mile zone. And so you're right. You can't really call it Hollywood anymore.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about global majority of productions in the world, they're no longer happening in the United States of America, are they? I would say if you think about the number of people getting jobs in the entertainment industry all over the world, mm-hmm. and if you call it the entertainment industry, which is what it is not Hollywood anymore.
That's true. And,
don't get me wrong. I'm here because it's Hollywood.
Right. This is the industry we grew up in.
Yeah. And I get to work at a company that makes some of the best content in the world and some of my friends' favorite shows. That's the fun.
Absolutely.
That's my feeling about that's the thing that feels quote unquote Hollywood about it. But mm-hmm. when I think about the industry that we're in the entertainment industry, and I don't really think those are synonymous anymore.
I would agree. And I think actually you probably have a very interesting vantage point that you view things from, given your role. And just to kind of spell it out again, it's Senior Vice President of Equity and Inclusion and Content. And that doesn't mean in the US. I think your remit is global. And it's especially interesting to talk to you because of what's going on at HBO Max. And I know you're on, your role is across Warner Media, but HBO Max is probably the most talked about and the most visible in in the entertainment space, both on a consumer side as well as within the industry right now, especially with HBO Max announcing every few months that you guys are rolling out in a bunch of other countries. There was just an announcement last week on 15 new countries in Europe, I think, and said the number of countries is up to 63. I know India is imminent. So how does that play into, I mean, equity and inclusion in content is one thing if you're looking at it through an American lens, but then when you're looking at it through a global lens, it is massive and must be so damn exciting.
It allows me to look at it in a way that I think is a little bit more. I think when you can look at it on a global level, it's a lot easier for anyone to understand what we're talking about, right? Because it's really about understanding what underrepresented means, right? Mm-hmm. And I think like across the board, the unifying factors about underrepresented communities, like when you think about people with disabilities, when you think about socioeconomic status, right? There are certain things that, are level setting in a way, right? And speaking to you and you being very familiar with this, the class system, right? That's an incredible unifying factor of a global culture, right?
Yeah.
And so when you start to think about it from that perspective and who that affects, that's when you're thinking about it.
I'm curious, is there a different framework through which you look at this for the US domestically and a different one internationally? Is there like a rule book or like a playbook of sorts?
What's interesting about the way that we've looked at the strategy, and we actually have a head of international as well, who's awesome. You should look him up, actually. You should look up any of my team members because they're rock stars. But Asif Siddiq, he's our head of international. And I work with a woman named Karen Horn and Mikan Shelton. And all of them
are they all in LA or are they in different places?
So Karen, Mikan, and myself are here. Mm-hmm. And Asif is in London. What has been interesting is that we all have very, different paths to these roles. Mm-hmm. And so we all come with our own unique perspectives, personalities, and the way we look at things. But it's very, very cool to be able to work with someone like Asif, who has worked in so many different countries like yourself, and to be able to hear what a lot of the unifying factors are, right? And so that to me is like, that's when this job gets incredibly interesting to me, is when you get to look at it globally, right? Because I think oftentimes when, a lot of conversations happen, it's usually like talking about the thing that is happening at that moment. But there's also a way that you have to look at that globally and the effect that it can have, or at least let people look inward, right? But when you look at it through content, our content is being watched by the whole world. So when you think about representation and that in our content, you simply have to look at it like about getting fans. That's why it's fun to work with superheroes, right? And my cousin in India and I can both be fans of Iron Man. It's a superhero. Would it be really cool to have tons of Indian superheroes and a DC universe that's all Indian superheroes? Yes, absolutely. But I would throw that back to you as I would say you're a global citizen. Like when you were growing up, did you care that whether what color Superman was? Just out of curiosity? No, actually, I never even thought of it. And I think it was maybe the fact that I was immersed in an environment of, everybody. I never thought of people as different. To me, everyone was different. And so it was just a given. And, it was only, really, you're conditioned to think in a certain way that you just accept it, that Superman looks a certain way, and the truth is that you don't really get, even though Batman is Bruce Wayne, you never really get to see his face as Batman. You never get to see Spider-Man's face I guess there might even be a reason for that. But I know that I never really became conscious of it
until much later, maybe in my 30s, when people started talking about, I know Shekhar Kapoor used to, I maybe across a span of like 4 or 5 years or more, I probably heard him speak about this at different conferences and different contexts. And even as late as 2015, when he did this thing in LA, which was the future of entertainment. And there were a bunch of people from Bombay who he'd taken a bunch of us from here to LA to talk about various things. And even then he mentioned it, and he was like, imagine in a few years from now, you're going to take Spider-Man's mask off and he's going to be Indian or Chinese. And he said that the first time I heard him say that was in 2007 in Bombay. And that was the first time I really thought about it. And it's weird, but now it's much more part of the conversation, and it's much more, real in a way. And we were just talking about this yesterday. My head of development, Pratik, and I were in conversation on a call about a certain project. And then we started talking and I know Pratik is really passionate about this. And he talked about the fact that if you watch the trailer for the new Spider-Verse, perhaps there's a bit of, the writing stylistically looks like Hindi or Devanagari, which kind of alludes perhaps to the fact that this Indian Spider-Man may be coming soon. And I'm pretty certain that, and even if you look at other attempts at Marvel, and I'm sure at DC as well, there's definitely conversations happening around that. And so I think it's just a matter of time, because I had a pretty different sort of upbringing, so I wouldn't use myself as the barometer for it. But I'm pretty sure if you're a kid, especially now in 2022 or even in 2015, growing up in a small town in India, you're definitely thinking, why do these guys not look like me? So to answer your question, long.
I mean, all of that is fair. I mean, do I wish there were tons more female superheroes too? Right. And yeah. I think, I think superheroes are also a reflection of the, time that they're created into. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just such an interesting thing about IP in that respect, right? When you're thinking about characters generally, I guess for so many, I spent so much time thinking about characters, right? Yeah. Like when you're in development and you're doing that for so many years. So I think that too allows you to think about inclusion differently too, right? Yeah. Because you're always just looking for interesting characters and dimension and opportunities to create complications in storytelling. So I think that when you get to, like, I always say that Superman's the ultimate immigrant, right? And I was actually interviewing a comedian for a virtual comedy showcase that my colleague Karen Horn, and I got to work on it a little bit with her. And this guy said this to me in the interview, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I say that too." And it's like, that's no matter where you're from, like, it's got kryptonite, it's from Krypton. Like, that's the cool part about it, right?
I never thought of it like that, but it's totally true in every way, and it's funny because you're talking about, when I was a kid, and definitely the archetype of Superman or Batman, these are sort of hallowed figures and sort of special in many ways that, they're sort of out of reach and aspirational and everything. And I think, when you're defining, and it's part of it, in terms of making superheroes more real, making them look more like the world and making them behave more like regular people as well. And I think that started to happen of late, for example, Boys, and there's, what's the other one? What's the one right now that's really big? Peacemaker? Yeah.
Hello. Do you want to talk about Peacemaker? Sorry. We can talk about that all day. I mean, I don't think it's right, because this is something that's really interesting, and I find it to be a conundrum, because having been a development executive, and being part of the fun of being a development executive, and I also had a really great boss, bosses over my career. But when I was a comedy development exec, mm-hmm. I was working for Susanna Makos. And that was my last comedy boss, if you will. And she's now at HBO Max and she's crushing it. So it's so fun to watch because so many of the people I work with and have worked with over my career work at this company too. And I haven't got to even work with them in person. How sad is that?
Wow, really?
There's so many people in this company that I've respected their careers, and to be able to actually have so many smart people in the company and have to be stuck on video all the time with them. It is, I think that's the pain and anguish that I'm having right now.
I hear you now. I get why you really want to get back to the office. I mean, even for us with a small team,
FOMO, YOLO.
Yeah.
You only live once. I want to hang out with these smart people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and why not? That's that's one of the reasons you work in great places and great companies is because of everyone else you can work with and learn from and talk to. So if you don't have that, no, I totally get it. I don't think this is sensitive information, but to know that your boss's office is sitting on the Warner Brothers lot and you don't actually get to go there all the time for a meeting. What's the point of being in the entertainment industry? Absolutely. Good point.
I didn't get into this business to sit behind if I wanted to be an actress, I'd go be on video and be an actress. I want to be behind the scenes over here making good stuff.
I hear you. And so, you're talking about all of this. I realize, I was looking through, I know your career trajectory, but I just sort of looked it up again on LinkedIn yesterday because we were going to have this conversation. And
you didn't just pull it up just now?
No, not just now.
You should have this. I wish I could hear that. So, I thought we were friends. Well, you had to look at my LinkedIn.
I know, but I found something new in there. Look, I know about the other stuff that you do outside of, strictly speaking, your job, but it is connected to your professional life. And one of those things that I wanted to talk about, which is directly connected to your role right now, is color entertainment. Tell me about that, because it's, the world of equity and inclusion, sort of diversity in this business is absolutely not new to you.
Let's see. That is one of the best organizations that I have ever been involved with. Mm-hmm. It is a group of executives that were some of the few executives of color that started it. Bruce Evans and Kelly Edwards.
Right.
And Kelly actually ran the HBO Access programs right before I was here. And she's now a writer on Our Kind of People. So she has truly been a multi-hyphenate in this business. And you probably have seen her book is out too, which is such a cool thing to see.
What's it called?
It's called From the Executive's Chair.
Nice.
But what's cool is she's already set up a series of books, in my mind, right? Now she can write a book from every perspective.
Nice.
Anyway, those are some of the cool people that I had the opportunity of meeting by being a part of Color Entertainment. But it was a networking. It started as really just a networking group of getting people together.
And it's
now it's because of the pandemic, we didn't get to celebrate our 20-year anniversary of that organization.
Wow.
So if you'd like to fund or partner on the 22nd anniversary of Color Entertainment, please let me know. I will get you in touch with the right people.
Oh, that'd be cool. And I'm curious, because being someone who's lived in different places and has grown up in different educational systems, I'm very, very conscious of different spellings, U.S. spellings on U.S. spellings. Why is color spelled COLOUR?
I should know the answer to this question, and I don't, because it started well before I got there.
Okay.
Well, and I should ask that question, and I think you should have Kelly Edwards on this podcast.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So she can tell you, or Bruce Evans. Either
that's
one.
A good idea. Maybe have both. Yeah.
Or any of the awesome board members that I've had Without color entertainment, I wouldn't have the career path that I had.
I hope our producer Shlok, who's listening in on this conversation, is taking notes right now in terms of next guests. So, so tell me, so to segue into something that you've spent a large part of your career in, which you've alluded to as well. So before you became focused on equity and inclusion in your professional role, you have really grown up in comedy, right? And that's sort of your real passion as a genre is comedy. And so I'm finding it's interesting because the two seem to kind of go really well together, because I feel like in the way that content has changed, voices have changed, comedy seems to be the most obvious way to kind of cut through a lot of the barriers, right? And I think it's sort of, we talk about it a lot, when in doubt, and I don't like using the term genre to just signify everything that is not prestige drama or half hour.
What do you define prestige drama as, just out of curiosity?
That's a very good question. Is
it the same globally, just out of curiosity?
I guess.
Tell me,
okay.
Roopak.
No, seriously, I think it's a rather ironic definition. I think prestige drama is something which is perhaps, okay, so it has certain characteristics, and it's almost like you know it when you see it. One of the things is that it doesn't need to follow tropes, in my opinion, and I'm dissecting this as we speak. Another element would be that it can take its time. And a third element would be that, what would be a third element of prestige drama?
Give me an example. You're saying a lot of words that I'm like,
okay,
yeah, I guess so. So I'm very curious now, just from your perspective, what is your favorite prestige drama?
Perhaps The Wire.
Oh, sweet Roopak. This is why it is a wonderful thing, content, because you have lived all over the world. And what show did you just say is one of your favorite prestige dramas? A show set in Baltimore.
Yeah.
About crime.
Absolutely. That to me is the quintessential prestige drama. Yeah. Now that's what I'm saying. It's, it when you see it, but it's so hard to define. But you also know when something is not prestige, and perhaps it's a little bit of content snobbery from content folks, because maybe prestige drama is what is not prestige is stuff that is extremely popular and for everyone at times. Right. And I feel
do you feel that, or do you think that's the perception of what that means? Like, I watched the Peacemaker, and that's a prestige drama for me. If someone told me that was going to be on my resume, and it's on Joey Chavez's resume over at HBO Max, I would be like, that's the show I want on my resume. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, that brings up a really important, interesting question, because I guess it is, now that I think about it, it's probably to differentiate it from what's at the other end of the spectrum? Sitcoms? Is it sitcoms on one side and prestige drama on the other? Is that the spectrum?
I mean, I think that you're putting prestige drama into a category. I mean, like, I guess this is the other question. Are you asking, is a prestige drama in your mind better than that of a comedy or a sitcom? Like, would you put Big Bang Theory Big Bang Theory or Friends, or let's talk about one of my favorite sitcoms of all time, which is obviously Friends. But there's so many other sitcoms that I grew up on that are in the WB library, right?
By the way, I'm experiencing Friends all over again because my 12-year-old Zen is hooked on it, and now my 10-year-old is watching it too. And again,
what else is your 10-year-old watching? Please tell me.
Apart from that, he's just playing Fortnite and FIFA 22. And Friends.
22 is a very good game.
It is.
You know what game that I love?
What?
and this is because, and I got to hand it to whoever developed the show. I hope it's Bella or I'm sure it's not. She's too high up to be actually developing shows, right? But whoever on her team is responsible for F1, it changed my pandemic for the better because I'm obsessed now with F1, but I'm also obsessed with playing the game.
I think it may actually be one of the most impactful pieces of content in terms of moving the needle on something, right? And I say that because the perception of F1 and the engagement and the enthusiasm for Formula One in general has just gone through the roof. And I haven't seen any statistics like, for example, I remember after Queen's Gambit came out, I remember they said something about, chess.com traffic went up 9x in 1 month, right? And so I haven't read anything like that about Formula One, but I know anecdotally, so many people here in India, for example, so many people got into Formula One because they watched that show. So very, very impactful, anecdotally again.
So you're saying that you don't actually have the statistics?
No.
That's
no. But I think
people count on. I think I need to have the data.
Yeah, I think I need to look up the data right now.
I'm worried you're going to spread fake news. I'm very sensitive to that.
Let's see, Formula One Netflix show Impact. Okay, Sports Illustrated reported in October that U.S. viewership was 53% higher, and they attribute this to Drive to Survive. Yep, there's stuff out there. So I'm not going to quote numbers, but I'm going to say that there are.
Joking. I'm of that population, and I'm proud of it.
Absolutely.
It was good. I mean, I have to say, there's very few times that. I mean, first of all, I'm always on a screen for work, so I truly have to love something to spend the time to watch something all the way through right now, because I would much rather be outside. I'd much rather not be stuck in an office. It's just I would literally like to be on my phone. Like everyone dreamed of being like that. To me is Hollywood, by the way, going back to that conversation, just the ability to run around and go to meetings and be in person with people and not have to sit at your desk all day. I think that's the thing that I miss the most. If you want to get back to the pandemic conversation and Hollywood,
I miss travel. Although I have to say, when things opened up, I did manage to get into California for 2 to 3 weeks when I actually saw you.
We saw each other in person after.
And that was amazing because I got in, just before Thanksgiving, did a bunch of meetings, came back out, and then Omicron hit. So I'm waiting to come back again. Just coming back to Drive to Survive, I would ask our listeners to read a New York Times article from July 16th, 2021 about Drive to Survive and the impact that it had on igniting Formula One. Just so that you don't listen to Samata's accusations of me spreading fake news on this podcast.
Listen, I'm kidding. When you're... I know you are. I mean, I get to work with people that are making awesome stuff all the time. Yeah. And I love getting to watch it's to spend time on content that I really love is awesome. But I've watched a lot of stuff the last 2 years. I'm ready to see the world.
Have you watched Station 11?
Of course I have. Isn't it
oh my God.
I watch the things that come out of our company, but I'm just saying that thankfully a lot of it is good.
Yeah, but what is that show? It's amazing. It is the most unique thing I have watched in a very, very long time. But I'm not able to explain why. I just wasn't able to put it in words. Can you help me out here?
I mean, it's good content.
And why is that? Because often enough I'm able to explain why. This one I wasn't.
Do you think that there's maybe something relatable about it to you? Do you think people are feeling it a certain way? Do you think that, I don't know, was there characters in there that were interesting to you?
I think there was a sense of,
just the idea of the little girl and just the whole opening scene and like how it all happens and how it all comes together. And then you cut to later, like to see what she's become. I mean, like I think a lot of people kind of feel that way right now.
Yeah. And I think it's all of that for sure, right? There's like a sense of,
or maybe is it just me that feels that way?
No. It's,
I'm kidding.
Because initially, when we started watching it, we were, and Tara sort of, she said, "Oh no, a pandemic show. Not really sure we want to watch this." And then it turned out to be, so gripping. So it kind of, moves that kind of feeling, if anyone has it, to the wayside. And then you realize it's not a pandemic show.
No, it's not.
And there's a sense of melancholy. There's, a bit of nostalgia in there somewhere. But I think what's really clever is how it's the structure of it, the editing of it, how it goes back and forth. And initially, which could be confusing, but it's not. It's done so beautifully. And and I'll tell you the best part about it is that it ends on a happy note, which something like this often wouldn't.
Wow. You think, or do you think that that's a function of like current content or the amount of content? Because I feel like there's a reason why I don't, now it's going to sound dirty, but like, I was like, there's a reason why the term happy endings exists. Right.
Right.
Is it because you've been trained to think that everything now you've now begun to expect that now everything's going to end darkly? Is that what you're telling me?
That's it for this episode, folks. Tune in to the next episode of Flux Navigators for part 2 of my conversation with Samata, where we talk about why some shows stick and others don't.